just from the first moment of the game. Kratos, our hero, bends his head to a tree marked by a hand as if he's in prayer. A bit ironic, because Kratos is a god. And then he swings his axe with a violent blow. This, I am sure, intentional juxtaposition defines the story of the game God of War. Today, we're going to be reviewing the story of God of War, setting aside the stunning graphics and the great gameplay to focus in depth on the journey that Kratos and his son Atreus take, and the tools that the writers and game developers use to suck us, the audience, in. As a warning, there will be spoilers, so if you want an unspoiled look at the game, be warned. The story of God of War is an exemplar at showing and not telling, and we see that showcased in the opening sequence. In the first few seconds of the game, we see Kratos hiding his forearms from his son, forearms marked from the scars of his previous life. We immediately know Kratos is keeping secrets from his son, and this is a major theme in the game. And just when we start to think, this is not the same Kratos from previous games, he goes ahead and lifts up a full tree without breaking a sweat. Within the first 2 minutes of the game, we see hints at the major motifs of the story and are introduced to the scenery of the world. What a hook, and not what you'd expect from a game about fighting. It's quiet, brief, and asks many questions. How did Kratos get here? What's up with the marked trees? What else is Kratos hiding? Questions that pull us in. After our quick introduction to the world and the characters, the story begins, as it should, and it begins with a funeral. Starting with a funeral, well, perhaps not as good as starting with a wedding, can be quite strong. Characters' emotions are on high, with an end comes a new beginning, and oddly enough, a chance to learn more about the person that just died, something that the authors just scratched the surface on in this game. Faye, mother and wife to Atreus and Kratos, just died, and her last wish was to have her ashes spread on the highest peak in all of the realms. A simple personal quest for a character that has already killed all the gods in the Greek pantheon, right? But it's a quest that will span the entire game. But before we get to that quest, Kratos must know if his son is ready to make the journey. And even as Faye is burning on the funeral pyre, Kratos asks his son to hunt. What a tell into Kratos' character. The point of this hunt is to show us more about the world, yes, but more importantly is to explore the relationship between Kratos and his son. There are goods. It's touching to see Kratos trust Atreus with his mother's knife, but just as easily he explodes when his son misses a shot and won't stand for anything but complete compliance and control.
What are you doing? Now his guard is up. Only fire! Only fire when I tell you to fire.
It's real. None of it seems forced. We're getting all of this naturally. This relationship, father and son plus control and freedom, is half the story of God of War, and at least in the intro, they nail it. The hunt ends with Kratos helping Atreus kill a deer and Kratos failing to comfort him. This is another theme that we explore in the intro, the theme of life's value. We see this throughout the story, and it's well introduced here. It's such a powerful theme, too, because if you've played the previous games, you know how much dissonance there is with this theme and Kratos' past. But we are immediately thrust back into the action.
Atreus!
We're gonna fight that?
We get the first big action sequence of the game. And the strategy of splitting up emotionally poignant with either comedy or action is a classic recipe, and in God of War it's well done. Not only that, but the fight ends with one final bang. Atreus' anger.
Ah! That's what you get!
Boy.
A bit cringy, right? Exactly. This was the start of something I thought could be quite beautiful. A young god with an anger problem. ultimate power with just about zero responsibility. But back to the story. The hunt culminates with Kratos telling his son that he's not ready. Kratos will have to spread the ash himself. Notice that we did not just hear an expert telling his son that he was not ready, we saw it. Even as the audience, we could tell that Atreus wasn't ready. And our introduction to the God of War story ends on an even higher note. The stranger arrives, who we know is Baldur. And this scene is so clever.
I thought you'd be bigger. But you're definitely the one. Long way from home, aren't you?
What do you want?
Oh, you already know the answer to that.
Whatever it is you seek, I do not have it. You should move on.
And here I thought your kind was supposed to be so enlightened, so much better than us, so much smarter.
If you've played through God of War before, you know that Baldur is looking for giants, hence the lines, "I thought you'd be much bigger," and "your kind is supposed to be more enlightened." Yet, the first time the player plays, they assume that Baldur is talking about Kratos as a god. The misunderstanding is staring you in the face, but you don't see it. Not only is the writing oh so clever, but the verbal quirks and mannerisms of Baldur are brilliant, as most of the voice acting is in the game. And then we get to the fight. This marks the end of the beginning, and what a spectacular end. The choreography is splendid. We finally see the power of the gods. We see the environment crumble around them. By the end of the scene, both Kratos and we are exhausted in a wonderful way.
Who was he? He knew me. Did he know my past? How did they find me after all this time? Faye, what do I do? Our son is not ready to carry your ashes to the top of the mountain.
It's nice to hear this bit of internal dialogue to get inside Kratos' mind for a bit. It's a bit cliche, but mostly believable, and is one of the few instances of telling rather than showing. And it starts our quest for the top of the mountain. So, why do I spend so much time on the beginning of this story? Well, honestly, it's one of the best starts I've ever seen, similar to the way I feel about Murakami's first chapter of Norwegian Wood. And if I were to play this game again, it would be for the beginning. So savor it. All the themes that were explored, the mounting tension, it's quite wonderful. But we must now start in full. Both Kratos and Atreus begin the journey to the mountain. Their first eventful encounter is one I wish they had more of. They meet humans. And what a story they paint with their dialogue. With so few words, we understand that whatever is happening to the world is not a good thing.
They're untouched. Look! Someone start the fires! Sigmund, your knives! So many days without meat.
Meat? Wait, us?
Behind me.
My only disappointment is that this is the only encounter with humans that you have throughout the entire main quest. And as people, I think we're somewhat interested in what happened to us. Something else happens a little in the fight which is worth noting. Kratos uses the name Atreus.
Atreus!
I love this distinction in the writing. Just using the character's name instead of calling him boy gives it a different meaning. It's a really wonderful trick, if not overused, and they don't. The final thing to note in this scene is that Atreus takes a life while defending himself, and we see immediately that both characters have grown a bit. Kratos reaches out and touches his son, something he hesitated at the first time, and Atreus is able to act without his father's help. My only regret is that aside from other gods, the other enemies you fight are all just mindless killing machines. But, hey. Next, we meet the dwarves. Another lovely trick is used, You can understand so much about a person by the way they interact with animals, and, well, here's how Brock acts.
She have a name?
I don't know. Rude bastard ain't ever asked mine, so ain't ever asked hers. Ha!
This is a great trick that you can use in your own writing as well. Brock and his brother, Sindri, will act as the much-needed comic relief in this heavy hitter, and they do a good job. Their story of how they split and their reconciling is very tropish, and it doesn't really need to be highlighted. But hey, it's a side plot. The next part of our story gives us a chance to meet Freya, and it starts with another hunt. A lovely juxtaposition with the previous hunt that shows how much father and son have grown.
I got it. Elbow up, steady hand, relax. Accuracy over speed. Yes!
Do not lose it.
Then Freya shows up. Do we ever learn why she's friends with the boar? No. The writers probably wanted to have a scene to show how Freya gets serious when those she cares about are in danger, and gives her a chance to be overprotective, Freya's big flaw later on in the story, and a metaphor for the way she treats her son. The problem here is that the connection is too forced. I don't see why they had to be a boar at all. Why not just let Atreus get hurt and Freya cure him? It would make much more sense. I understand that they wanted a hunt scene, and then they wanted a scene with Freya desperately healing something, but a boar that never got any resolution to? And why is she so trusting of Kratos immediately? It's just all a little too far-fetched and never gets explained. Now, it's not all bad. The lovely thing about this scene is just how magical it feels. The change in environment is absolutely wonderful. The color change, the plants moving, the giant turtle. We really feel that we're stepping into a fairy tale, which is strange to say because we're already in a fantasy game. The next goodie is what happens next.
I know you're a god. Not of this realm, but there's no mistaking it. He doesn't know, does he? About your true nature? Or his own?
That is none of your concern.
She knows about us, and we don't know about her. We feel vulnerable. Not only that, she sees right through Kratos and points out to the audience as well the problem we've been guessing at all along. Kratos lies to his son. And the lovely thing about incorporating lies in stories is that the audience knows. And there's some feeling an audience gets when they watch somebody act when believing a lie. A strange giddiness mixed with dread. And the lie that Kratos told Atreus was a big one. Atreus thinks he isn't a god. Kratos and his son leave, but not without thanks.
You want solitude? This mark will hide you from those who might make your journey difficult.
Another good trick, and it leaves us a bit uncertain. What was the mark really for? And if it does protect us, it gives the story a reason to delay our meeting with the final boss. Now, we get to the bad of Freya. She, for very little reason, acts like our tour guide to Midgard. She gives Kratos a magic compass. She then just appears whenever our duo needs her and tells them what to do. Even though the game admits to this, the answer comes off as so trite.
Why help us?
Maybe I see more of myself in you than I'm willing to admit. Maybe by helping you, I'll make up for a lifetime of mistakes.
It just doesn't make any sense and is just way too grandiose. Regardless, she clearly explains what you need to do and gets us to the next chapter. All fine.
No. Damn it, not yet.
What's happening?
To restore the Bifrost magic, you must step into the light. But be very careful not to get caught.
Alfheim begins with some cryptic advice, which turns out to be not too important. So, it could be better story-wise, but I guess I'm being a little too nitpicky. We come to Alfheim in the middle of a war, where it seems the Dark Elves are senselessly slaughtering the Light Elves. It ends with Kratos basically destroying half the Dark Elf civilization, and the Dark Elf leader telling Kratos, "You've made a mistake." There's no resolution to the chain of events this time, but it does seem like there could be some goodies in a sequel, so I'll stave off on the complaining. But personally, we get to understand Kratos and Atreus quite a bit more. Kratos enters the light of Alfheim and has something along the lines of a vision. This type of story tool is a lovely way to dive more into what a character is thinking, manifesting those thoughts as something the audience can see. The vision highlights the divide between Atreus and Kratos. It really focuses on that main theme of Atreus believing he's ready, whereas Kratos does not. But this time we get to see it from Atreus' point of view. We also get hints as to what happened in the past. Kratos left Atreus in the past, and he leaves him again.
I saved you! You were trapped in there! I waited and I waited, but you wouldn't come out! So I pulled you out!
We see this finally affecting Kratos, and as we leave Alfheim, we see Kratos' behavior change. He opens up to Atreus, and we understand why.
Oh, she was not there.
Not like you would even care if she was.
Mind your tongue, boy! Until our journey is over, one of us must remain focused. Do not mistake my silence for lack of grief. Mourn how you wish. Leave me to my own.
It was a great scene to end Alfheim, and kind of feels like we're getting to that resolution that we saw from just the beginning. The next climax of the story occurs when we reach the top of the mountain. We meet the three big baddies that we see in the game. And we meet one of the best supporting characters in any story that I've read, Mimir.
Who are you?
Me? I'm the greatest ambassador to the gods, the giants, and all the creatures of the Nine Realms. I know every corner of these lands, every language spoken, every war waged, every deal struck. They call me Mimir, smartest man alive. And I have the answer to your every question.
Why does the son of Odin hunt us?
Okay, there are a few gaps in my knowledge.
Mimir is trapped in a tree with only his head exposed, tortured every day by Odin, and the only way he can be freed is by decapitating. Yep, gruesome, unexpected, exactly what you'd expect from God of War. Mimir, after he's revived, continues to shed light on the world and the cruelties of Thor and the machinations of Odin through a series of well-timed and witty bits of banter, all while being strapped to your waist as a literal talking head, referred to as a head by Kratos. It is a beautiful device to paint the scenery around you with words, while still being interesting. Of course, the most important thing that happens once the two reach the top of the mountain is we learn we went to the wrong highest peak. So, the search continues. We visit the World Serpent, we solve lots of puzzles, development of the characters mostly stop, then we finally get something interesting. We meet Magni and Modi. Magni and Modi, two of the three big bad guys, are quite good, and they've got very identifiable stereotypes, one a brute and the other quite sniveling. Pretty good secondary bad guys. You don't want to have them being subtle if they're only going to get 15 minutes of screen time. But during the fight, a lot comes at us.
There must have been some war that made the last him.
I'll kill you!
Atreus! Control yourself!
No! How did you... You have no idea. You son of a bitch!
Get these guys! I'll rip your head off!
One, we see Atreus' rage peak up again. Two, Kratos kills Magni, a god. And three, Atreus becomes sick. You get this clenched gut feeling that something is about to break. There's just too much going wrong. It's a great climax, and a great breaking point. Atreus passes out, and Kratos, out of desperation, is forced to rush back to Freya, a god, and ask her for help. Watching Kratos impatiently wait on the elevator, showing his movement as he carries his son, the desperation in the music and his voice as he rushes to Freya, it makes the scene a powerful one. So now that I've said some nice things about it, let me complain a bit. Physical manifestations of inner pain are often quite good storytelling tools. Only when they are related to that pain. Atreus just gets sick. Why? Because he doesn't know that he's a god? Where's the connection? Perhaps giving him a split personality or a belief that he's mortal actually causing his mortality, preventing him from healing from a wound. But to just simply fall sick, it feels a little lazy, to be honest. Okay, enough with the bad stuff. What follows is the most powerful scene in God of War. Kratos takes responsibility for the boy's illness and faces his past. A forest fire and a storm give us a physical representation of the turmoil in Kratos as he's haunted by ghosts from his past. What's perhaps even more disturbing is the silence. We're used to Atreus' lively chatter and now we hear nothing. Using silence effectively as a tool is a good tell of great writing. When Kratos gets home, we finally see what he's been hiding. The Blades of Chaos, an icon from past God of War games. Kratos again wraps the chains around his wrists and journeys to the underworld in search of a cure for his son, haunted by the ghosts of his past. There's not too much to be said about the journey to Helheim, but that it's in stark contrast with the rest of the game. It's quiet. You see this return to the previous God of War. Kratos rips out the heart of the bridge keeper. It's pretty much the most disturbing scene in the entire game. Gross. Ultimately, Kratos does heal Atreus and tell him the truth about his nature.
I'm a god, boy. From another land far from here. When I came to these shores, I chose to live as a man. But the truth is, I was born a god. And so were you.
The next section of the game is defined by Atreus finding out that he's a god, and to say the least, it goes to his head.
Yeah! We're sick of hearing about little people's little problems!
By the way, a cool storm eruption. A bit of Zeus is in him, it seems. It's strange, though, seeing such a dramatic shift in his personality, and then such a dramatic shift back. I can't help but think if the writers had made his sickness something like a split personality, then this dramatic personality shift would make more sense. But as I see it now, in the context of the story, it seems strange. His behavior keeps getting more and more, well, godlike, and strangely enough, the pair becomes silent. Again, silence as a tool. Atreus, who you could command up until this point, starts acting on his own. The game does a really good job of showing what's happening, even though it's a bit too sudden. Regardless, his hubris keeps growing until they reach the top of the mountain. And then, Atreus shoots his father. I guess we knew this was going to happen. The story has had enough patricide references, and Atreus just kept getting more out of control. But this feeling of loss, failure, and betrayal is short-lived, in a bad way. I had no time to come to terms with these thoughts and emotions because everything's immediately resolved, just through pure force of will. Kratos single-handedly managed to stave off Baldur's attack from atop another dragon, and that's when Kratos has some words to say about his son's behavior.
You will listen to me and not speak a word. I am your father, and you, boy, are not yourself. You are too quick to temper. You are rash, insubordinate, and out of control. This will not stand. You will honor your mother and abandon this path you have chosen.
After that, Atreus turns back to his normal self. Conflict resolved. In the grander scheme of things, I guess Atreus throws a tantrum and Kratos scolds him. What I will say about this arc is that everything is just too sudden. How quickly did Atreus' pride rise and fall? It makes the story unbelievable. even more than the dragons do. The one thing I will give it is it does remind me of the old stories that I read as a kid about the gods, and how quick to temper they were and how dynamic their moods were. Regardless, I do think this arc could be better. There's not too much left to the game story-wise. We learn that Baldur is Freya's son, hopefully not too big of a surprise, and that Baldur wants to kill his mother. See any similarities? We then start to get to the denouement, the unraveling, where things start to piece together. The final conflict had ups and downs. It was rather miraculously resolved, though we did have ample foreshadowing.
We are moving.
That arrow. Baldur punched the mistletoe?
In the quiver strap, yes. Mistletoe harmed him.
Freya said it was wicked.
He's more than harmed. The spell is broken.
He can be killed.
I'm certain of it.
But the teamwork between father and son was simply brilliant. Of course, they beat Baldur and let him live, but things are never that easy. Baldur's raison d'etre, his purpose in life at this point, is killing his mother, and Kratos makes the choice to save Freya and kill Baldur. The writers really wanted us to see the parallels between Freya and Kratos, and I admit, I do see some in the end. But, And then finally, the end. The two main plot lines, secrets and trust, are finally resolved. Kratos takes the bandages off that cover his hands. It's in part an homage to the beginning of the sequence, where he hides it from his son. The irony here is that while it's momentous for Kratos, Atreus doesn't seem to care. I really like this. This is exactly how I feel it would happen, and I'm glad they played it this way. Directly after, Kratos decides to let Atreus carry his mother's ashes the rest of the way up the mountain. So we have our two resolutions. There's nothing more to hide, and Atreus is ready. I really like this. The game finishes up by tying some loose ends. Turns out that Faye prophesied the entire journey before Atreus was born, giving an excuse for how clean some of the plot points were, and gives us some hooks for the sequel. Overall, the story was excellent. The themes were pronounced, the characters well developed, and the use of tricks and tools was effective. It was a great story. Now, that doesn't mean there were not points which criticism would be merited. I wish the world explaining were better sewn into the story at certain points, especially around the beginning. And, near the end, I wish they gave us more time to gestate big events. But overall, a stunning experience. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more videos on stories and what makes them great. Thanks.
Goodbye, Faye.
I love you, Mom.